In a quiet American diner, a tired businessman sits alone, dressed modestly, his watch catching the faint light. The new waitress mistakes him for a drifter and humiliates him in front of customers. Silence fills the room as he's told to leave now. What no one knows is the man they're mocking isn't broke. He's a billionaire who's been hiding in plain sight. Hey friends, before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our amazing videos. Now let's jump right into the story. The diner clock ticked past 6 a.m. The place smelled of burnt coffee and grease, the kind of scent that clung to walls after decades of early mornings. A few regulars sat scattered across the booths, truckers with tired eyes, a young couple nursing pancakes, and at the corner table, a man in a worn gray jacket. His name was Elijah. His shoulders slouched, his hair slightly unkempt, but on his wrist glinted a watch that caught the neon light from the sign outside. He stirred his black coffee slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. To anyone passing by, he looked like a man down on his luck. Behind the counter, Rebecca, the new waitress, tightened her apron. She had started the job 2 weeks ago and wore her pride like armor. The manager had told her to keep the place clean, to keep out the wrong kind of crowd. So when she noticed Elijah sitting quietly, she didn't see a customer. She saw trouble. She walked over briskly, her shoes tapping on the old tile floor. "Sir," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut the silence. "We don't let people loiter here. If you're not ordering food, I'll need you to leave." Elijah looked up, surprised. "I already ordered coffee," he replied softly. His voice was calm, measured, but it carried a weight, like a man used to being doubted. Rebecca crossed her arms. "A coffee isn't a meal. We need tables for real customers." A hush fell across the diner. The truckers stopped mid-bite. The young couple glanced at each other nervously. Elijah placed a few bills on the table, enough to cover 10 coffees, and stood slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't shout, but the silence that followed was heavier than any outburst. As he buttoned his jacket, his watch caught the light again, gleaming gold. Nobody noticed except the older man at the counter, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Rebecca gestured toward the door. "You need to leave, now." Elijah nodded once. His eyes lingered on the people watching, not with anger but with something harder to face, disappointment. Then he walked out into the cold morning air. Inside, the chatter returned in whispers. Some shook their heads, others shrugged. Rebecca dusted her hands as if she had done the right thing. Yet, for a brief moment, unease flickered in her chest. Outside, Elijah stood by the curb, inhaling deeply. He had been here before, in boardrooms, on streets, in countless places where people looked only at the surface and never beneath. They thought they knew who he was. They were always wrong. The door swung shut behind Elijah, its glass rattling against the frame. The morning air cut sharp against his face, colder than it should have been. He pulled his jacket tighter, though the chill he felt had nothing to do with the weather. It was the sting, the old familiar sting of being looked at and dismissed. He stood on the sidewalk, the neon glow of the diner buzzing faintly behind him. Through the glass, he could still see Rebecca moving briskly between tables, her chin high, her expression smug. A couple of customers chuckled under their breath, the sound muffled but clear enough. He had been judged, labeled, and discarded. Just another man they thought didn't belong. For a moment, Elijah closed his eyes, and memories came rushing back. He was 12 years old again, standing in a grocery store line while his mother's food stamps drew stares from strangers. He was 21, turned away from a job interview before the manager even looked at his resume. He was 30, walking into a boardroom where his skin color spoke louder than his accomplishments. Every stage of his life had carried this same shadow. People assuming they knew his worth before he ever opened his mouth. The ache in his chest deepened, but alongside it was something else, an iron weight of patience, the kind forged only by enduring humiliation again and again. Back inside, Rebecca poured coffee into a mug, smirking at the story she'd tell later about kicking out a freeloader. She didn't see the old man at the counter shaking his head slowly. She didn't notice the silence that lingered in the corners of the diner long after Elijah walked out. Elijah glanced down at his wrist. The gold watch reflected the early sunlight, each tick reminding him of the truth no one there had seen. That watch wasn't a decoration. It was a gift from a board chairman after Elijah closed his first $100 million deal. It was proof of the life he had built, step by painful step. In spite of every insult, every dismissal, every door slammed in his face, and now here he was, once again shoved aside like he didn't matter. He exhaled slowly, letting the steam of his breath fade into the morning air. It wasn't anger that filled him. It was resolved. He had been here before, and he had learned to let the arrogance of others expose itself. Rebecca thought she had won. She thought she had protected her diner from someone unworthy. But what she had really done was draw a line in the sand, a line she would soon regret crossing. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the small-town diner. The clatter of dishes and chatter of regulars filled the air. But it all came to a stunned halt when the sound of engines grew louder outside. Rebecca, the waitress who had smirked so proudly earlier, wiped her hands on her apron and glanced through the glass. At first, she thought it was some kind of mistake. Sleek black cars pulling into their cracked asphalt lot, polished chrome glinting in the light. But the moment the doors opened, silence swept across the diner. Men in tailored suits stepped out, followed by assistants carrying briefcases. And then came the man she had laughed at, the one she had shoved toward the door that morning. Elijah. Only now, he wasn't just another customer. He was someone commanding the kind of respect she had never imagined. The manager fumbled with his tie, rushing to the entrance. "Sir, welcome back," he stammered, his voice caught between apology and disbelief. Elijah paused before entering. His eyes swept over the neon sign, the chipped paint on the window frames, the people staring through the glass. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. He stepped inside. The same floor he had walked on in humiliation now echoed beneath polished leather shoes. The conversations that once mocked him were gone, replaced with hushed silence and nervous glances. Rebecca froze, her tray trembling in her hands. The smile she had worn earlier was gone, replaced with something raw, fear, guilt, and disbelief. Elijah, a man in a gray suit, announced loudly, breaking the silence. "The contract is ready. The diner's owner is waiting in the back office." Every head turned. The truth was now undeniable. Elijah wasn't here for coffee. He was here for business. Serious business. The kind that involved numbers most people in that room couldn't even comprehend. The irony was sharp. Hours ago, Rebecca had looked at him and seen a nobody. Now, she was looking at the man about to sign a deal worth $200 million with her employer. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Elijah's eyes met hers. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence between them carried more weight than any lecture or rebuke ever could. It was the silence of truth, of dignity reclaiming its place. Rebecca felt her confidence crumble. The arrogance drained out of her. She realized, in that instant, that her cruelty had written her into the story of a man she had tried to erase. Elijah walked past her without another glance, disappearing into the back office. The door shut quietly, but its sound rang like a verdict. The office door creaked open. Inside, the diner's owner, a weary man named Jordan, sat nervously at a polished oak desk. Papers were stacked neatly, contracts laid out with pens waiting. Elijah entered with quiet authority, his presence filling the room without a single word spoken. Rebecca lingered just beyond the doorway, her apron wrinkled, her hands trembling against her sides. She wasn't supposed to be there, but something pulled her closer. She needed to see how this ended. Jordan extended a hand nervously. "Mr. Elijah, we're honored." His voice cracked under the weight of respect. Elijah didn't answer immediately. He placed his leather briefcase on the table, opened it slowly, and drew out a pen that glimmered under the dim light. For a man of his wealth, this contract was just another deal. But for everyone in that diner, it was a turning point they would never forget. Hey friends, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned so you never miss our latest videos. Rebecca swallowed hard, her throat dry. Hours ago, she had mocked him in front of strangers, convinced he was beneath her. Now she was watching the very man she dismissed secure her job's survival with the stroke of a pen. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Elijah looked up. His gaze found Rebecca through the glass door. He didn't glare. He didn't smirk. He simply looked, a calm, unshakable stare that carried more weight than rage ever could. In that moment, Rebecca realized the truth. His silence was judgment enough. Elijah lowered his eyes back to the contract and signed. Each stroke of the pen echoed like thunder in Rebecca's chest. When he set the pen down, the room seemed to exhale. The deal was sealed. The diner's future was safe. Jordan stood, reaching across the desk. "Thank you, sir. This means everything." But Elijah wasn't listening. His eyes returned to Rebecca one last time. No words, no explanations. Just a quiet truth hanging in the air. Respect costs nothing, but arrogance can cost everything. Rebecca's hands shook as she gripped her apron tighter. A whisper slipped out of her lips, barely audible. I should have been kind." Her own words stung like fire. Elijah closed his briefcase, nodded once, and walked out with his team. The door shut softly behind him, but the silence it left was deafening. Inside the diner, the staff stood frozen. No laughter, no chatter, no clinking of dishes, just the weight of what they had witnessed. A man they had belittled proved greater than their judgment. Rebecca stared at her trembling hands, the echo of her own cruelty replaying in her mind. She knew nothing would erase that moment, but she also knew it had carved a lesson deep into her soul.